Well, hi, folks. My name's Jerry Bleeker, and I wanted to talk about something that's been insanely great as of the last little while. Incorporates several of my passions. One is 3D printing. Two would be sharing designs for the betterment of education. And three is teaching. Now, I teach biology 11 and 12 in Prince George, BC, Canada, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the province. I've said that before, but it warrants saying again. And I had the opportunity to print this, and this came from Thingiverse. Now, before anything else happens, I have to explain what that is. If you haven't been to Thingiverse, it's a sharing environment. And this particular kit was shared by R. Forster 2019 on June 15th of this year. And it is simply amazing. What do I mean? Well, in biology, one of the things we teach in our grade 12 curriculum is how proteins are synthesized from specific amino acids. Think of them as little protein tidbits. And it follows the genetic code as stipulated by our DNA. That's the long and short of it. So if we go to Thingiverse, and if you search for DNA translation, search for any design that your heart desires. Mine, in this case, was very curious about DNA translation. Because when you go to model translation, it is something for the students that can be very complex. It's a series of steps from reading the genetic code to getting that message out to the ribosome, which is a little protein factory. And the ribosome takes marching orders and puts the little protein bits in order according to your genetic code. Okay, without getting into that, what you see here is a plastic kit with the little tidbits. Down here is a template of the genetic code, and this purple thing in the background is the ribosome. All of these are being delivered by these strange little green cactus things, which is what my students call them. And this is the strange green cactus things with their specific codes, or I should call them anti-codons, attached to them. Think of this kit as being Lego to learn about how proteins are made, the process of translation of our genetic code. Pretty stunning. Here's the big purple ribosome. Here is one of the little delivery devices, a transfer RNA. And this blue version here is a releasing molecule. We call it it's an RNA that causes a stop to the whole process, and there it even has stop written on it. Very cool. When you look at all of it in totality, I'll show you what it printed out like on my end. So on my end, I decided, that's awesome. Let's make this kit. This is a very difficult thing to teach. And why not have a DNA translation kit that's like Lego? So let's see if we can go full screen. Maybe a little bit bigger. Yes, we can. Okay. So the kit, sort of fancy. I made a cardboard box look a lot more pretty. And this is our kit. So I wanted to say thank you to R. Forster 20, well, I got to get your name right. R. Forster 2019 on Thingiverse, because we printed one. So here it is all together. We had to actually modify this little yellow piece here. Our printing assembly wasn't big enough to get the job done. But what does it look like? Well, here's all the little amino acid tidbits. Look great. And we're using high quality little plastic bags to hold all of the nucleotides, the little messages that say what the sequence of proteins should be. These go on this yellow strip. Without anything added, this is the whole assembly looking like this. There's the ribosome, and this is the messenger molecule that right now doesn't have any codes upon it. This is the one that I had to modify. I had to split it just so that I could print it, but it turned out for the better. Here's the transfer molecule in all its glory. I love that green. the amino acid tidbits, and this isn't all of them. It takes a lot to make all the protein in the body, from enzymes to your hair, to your nails, to your eye color, to your vocal cords. This one is one of my favorites, this little stop molecule. And on the bottom, it would have a code like UGA, like UGA. And that's apparently the stop message, one of several. So we printed out the kit, and it took, well, I'd say probably about $20 in plastic. We printed this kit. All of these things are mostly air. And you can see that they fit together, this wondrous little fashion. They're meant to fit together to look like this. Now, I don't have them hooked together here, but the idea is that these molecules here match the code here, and only histidine can be put in place with this specific code. Later, the code on this transfer molecule, transfer RNA, is such that only this delivery device will bring in isoleucine. So what we've got is what we call a dipeptide. That's a baby protein growing, folks. And it's pretty cool, because what we have now is something we can put in the hands of teachers or in the hands of students, and those students can use this to understand how protein is realized, how it is expressed, and it's awesome. Again, most of these parts, if you look really closely, it looks grainy. It's only 30% plastic, folks. It's mostly air. It's 70% air. So how did you do something like this? Well, we went to Thingiverse, and when you look at a project, it summarizes what it is, and it gets pretty technical here, but I kind of knew what I was looking for. It was a grade, it's a science subject all the way up to 12th grade. And knowing what we wanted, you could see that the files, let's go into the Thingiverse files. It'll take a moment to load. But all the files are here, and these stereolithography files, or STL files, are just a simple three-dimensional representation of an object that a 3D printer understands. So you have to pay attention to the license, by the way. This is a Creative Commons license, and our Forster 2019 has an attribution license. So the specifics of the license are, in this, you have to read over the details, but this isn't something that you would download and sell. No, somebody else made this. If you did something to improve it, often the licensing is such that you contribute back. For example, I cut the molecule in half using an open source piece of software called Blender, just so that that yellow strip would fit on the printer. So I had downloaded these pieces and told this that I wanted it to print it. What we have, and it's no plug in particular, this is just what we were lucky enough to afford. This is a Make Your Gear M2 3D printer, and it looks pretty amazing, and it is. Hot glue gun for plastic. This spool feeds up into a melter here, and that, well, let's see if we can get a little closer. That melter puts the plastic down on this bed, which is heated. Now, this may sound very complex, it may sound amazing, but basically it is plastic being put down in layers according to a three-dimensional file. So what do you need to do? Well, first, it's awesome if you can get a 3D printer, if you have access to one. We have two at College Heights Secondary, and there's several around District 57. So this is a great, great thing. Once you have access to a 3D printer, without getting into the software too much, the files, those STL files, and just double click this. Those STL files are understood by a program, and I'll just open up another of the ones that I've been playing with here. There we go. And this is called Simplify 3D. So what does it mean? This is a maze I made recently for a project, but with something like this, you can import the STL files. Let's see if I can open up a recent one. Literally by importing the STL files, you have this, bringing them in. And that's a video I would make separately. I just want to provide an overview. These files here, this represents the bed. These files are raring and ready to be printed. And a 3D printer, you tell, it's fancy with the settings, but I'll turn this down. You really don't need to print over 30%. And we're using polylactic acid filament, which is a biofilament. It's fairly friendly. Now, what I've done is this is just where the settings are, but suffice it to say that we melt plastic at 220 degrees. That's when it becomes caramelized in a liquid. And when it makes contact with the bed is 67 degrees Celsius. When the plastic is laid down, it holds it in place. So we'll just say OK to these settings. Once the maker gear understands how it's going to print, you literally say prepare to print. And what is fascinating about this is that you can save the file. Now, at this point, you're saving a file called a G-code file, but all that means is it is the X, Y, and Z information. In other words, where does the plastic go? Where does it go left? Where does it go right? Where it goes up, down, and you give it depth. What's amazing about this is you can plug your computer directly in with a USB printer cord, but I find it nice to just save the file to these little memory sticks, and I place those in the printer. You select the file, and it just starts printing. What's kind of amazing, to say the least, and I'm going to zoom in on this, is you can see this is the printer head, and this is exactly how it prints. So if I put it on side like that, as you watch it print, and I've chosen to print without a raft, that's like an extra bit of material on the bottom. And in this case, you don't need it because it's a very flat structure. And plus, you have to pull the raft off. It's like extra stuff on the bottom to make sure it sticks. Anyways, as you watch, you can see, let's turn it a little bit, and I'll zoom in. You can see that, as I said, it's mostly air because it's this honeycomb-like structure. So as it prints, it fills in, and it continues. And now you can see as we're moving forward in time, multiple layers, 50th layer, the letters begin to form. And the letters are elevated. And I think that is amazing. And it takes a while to print, but it's far less material than you would ever really need. You could set it probably to 20%. So pretty neat. In totality, if you want to see that from start to finish, you can just hit play like this, and there it goes. There's your product, which is awesome. So saving out to this little stick, you put it in your 3D printer, and your 3D printer whips you up your file. This thing. And it's fascinating to watch. If you could watch it in time lapse, you would see it forming little bit by little bit. So yes, it's called a Maker Gear M2, and that's a great picture of something that's being formed. It can make some pretty impressive shapes. It's monochromatic, which means it's single color. So what you see is kind of what you get. All right, so let's close that out. So what do we have? Well, just kind of going back to our file. There we go. Our file is now a learning resource for the school, and it's great. I'm looking forward to having some students and some colleagues take this out for a test drive. I just did a quick test drive in this case for the purpose of this video, but this is what I think 3D printing is really about. You can print things that you would never get your hands on, or it would be so hard to find online. And now this was an open source shared 3D design, and this is something we can use at our school. And we burned our own budget to do it, our own plastic, and this is tough as nails, and it will be around for a long time. So let's call this best new thing in the world today at College Heights lately. Thanks for listening, folks, and have a good one.